There were shoes for sale, but the boy asked for the shoeless woman in the glass. The collector's choice. Tobias Reed pressed his face against the rain-streaked window of the transport pod, watching the towering spires of Meridian Plaza grow larger as they approached the city's commercial heart. The 11-year-old's fingers traced nervous patterns on the fogged glass, leaving small spirals that disappeared as quickly as they formed. In his worn jacket pocket, he clutched a small velvet pouch containing everything of value he owned in the world. Next stop, Meridian Plaza Central, the automated voice announced with mechanical precision. Please mind the gap between the platform and the transport. Tobias shouldered his threadbare backpack and stepped onto the gleaming platform. The plaza stretched before him like a crystalline canyon, its walls lined with stores that seemed to glow from within. Holographic advertisements danced through the air, promoting everything from neural enhancements to exotic pets. But Tobias wasn't here for luxury. He was here out of desperation. His grandmother, Madame Rosette, had been getting worse. The coughing fits that started 3 months ago now left her gasping for breath, her once bright eyes dulled with pain. The district medic had been blunt. Without the expensive respiratory treatment, she had perhaps 2 weeks left. The cost was astronomical, more money than Tobias had ever seen in his life. But he refused to give up. The pouch in his pocket contained his most precious possessions, his mother's wedding ring, a rare quantum crystal he'd found in the ruins outside their district, and an antique music box that had belonged to his great-grandmother. Together, they might be worth enough to buy the medicine Madame Rosette needed. He wandered through the plaza's main thoroughfare, intimidated by the pristine shops and impeccably dressed customers. Everything here seemed designed to remind visitors, like him, that they didn't belong. But Tobias pressed on, determined to find someone who might be interested in his treasures. After being turned away from 3 upscale jewelry stores and 2 antique dealers, Tobias found himself standing before an establishment unlike any other. The storefront was elegant but somehow unsettling, with deep purple walls and silver trim that seemed to shift in the light. Above the entrance, elegant script proclaimed, "Thorne's Emporium of Wonders, exclusive collectibles and companions." Through the tall windows, Tobias could see figures standing motionless behind glass panels like living statues in individual display cases. Some appeared to be engaged in graceful poses, others seemed to be sleeping. All were beautiful in their own way, with perfect features and flawless skin that caught the light like porcelain. A small sign near the door read, "Viewing by appointment only. Serious collectors welcome." Tobias hesitated. He certainly wasn't a serious collector, but desperation overrode his uncertainty. He pushed open the heavy glass door. A soft chime announced his arrival, and immediately the temperature seemed to drop several degrees. The interior was even more impressive than the exterior suggested. Row upon row of glass chambers lined the walls and formed aisles throughout the space. Each chamber contained a figure, some standing, some seated, all perfectly still. Soft, classical music played from hidden speakers, creating an atmosphere that was both elegant and deeply unsettling. "May I help you, young man?" The voice came from behind him, smooth and cultured but somehow cold. Tobias turned to see a tall, thin man in an expensive suit approaching. The man's silver hair was perfectly styled, and his pale eyes seemed to catalog everything about Tobias in a single glance. I'm looking to sell some things," Tobias stammered, suddenly feeling very small in the vast space. "Valuable things. My name is Tobias Reed." The man's eyebrows rose slightly. "I am Mr. Cornelius Thorne, proprietor of this establishment. I'm afraid we don't typically purchase items from walk-in clients. Our clientele has very specific tastes, and our inventory is carefully curated." "Please," Tobias said, pulling the velvet pouch from his pocket. "I just need someone to look at what I have. It's for my grandmother. She's sick, and I need to buy medicine." Something in Tobias's voice must have moved Mr. Thorne, because his expression softened slightly. "Very well. Let me see what you have." Tobias carefully laid out his treasures on a nearby glass counter. The wedding ring caught the light beautifully, its small diamond sparkling. The quantum crystal hummed with barely contained energy, its faceted surface shifting through subtle color changes. The music box, when opened, played a haunting melody while a tiny dancer spun inside. Mr. Thorne examined each item with a jeweler's loupe, his expression neutral. After several minutes, he looked up. "These are interesting pieces. The crystal in particular has some value. I could offer you perhaps 1,500 credits for the lot." Tobias's heart sank. The medicine cost 10,000 credits. "That's all? I'm afraid so. As I said, our clientele has very specific requirements." Mr. Thorne began to turn away, then paused. "Though, if you're truly desperate, there might be another arrangement we could discuss." "What kind of arrangement?" "Well, you seem like an observant young man. Perhaps you could help me solve a small problem I've been having." Mr. Thorne gestured toward the back corner of the store, where a single glass chamber sat slightly apart from the others. "That particular piece has been difficult to move. She's been here for months, and no one seems interested." Tobias followed Mr. Thorne's gaze and felt his breath catch. In the corner chamber sat a woman who looked to be in her early 30s. Unlike the other figures in the store, she wasn't posed in some artificial tableau. She simply sat cross-legged, on the floor of her chamber, her head resting against the back wall. Her long, dark hair fell around her shoulders like a curtain, and her feet were bare, the only unadorned figure in the entire establishment. But it was her eyes that captured Tobias's attention. While all the other figures stared straight ahead, with vacant, peaceful expressions, this woman's eyes held something different. They moved, tracking the few customers who passed by her chamber, and in their depths, Tobias saw something that made his chest tighten, a profound sadness mixed with what could only be described as hope. "What's wrong with her?" Tobias asked, moving closer to the chamber. "Nothing's wrong, per se," Mr. Thorne replied with a dismissive wave. "She's simply unstimulating. The others are enhanced, programmed with conversation skills, artistic abilities, various talents that collectors find appealing. This one is basic model, no special features. Rather dull, really." Tobias pressed his palm against the glass. The woman inside seemed to notice the gesture, and for just a moment her eyes met his directly. In that instant, Tobias felt something electric pass between them, a recognition that went beyond words. "She doesn't look dull to me," he said quietly. Mr. Thorne snorted. "Well, you're entitled to your opinion. The point is, she's taking up valuable display space and generating no interest. If you could somehow help me move her, I might be willing to increase my offer for your items significantly." "Move her how?" "Find her a buyer, of course, though I suspect that may prove challenging. She's been here so long that I've begun to wonder if she's defective in some way." Tobias continued to stare at the woman in the glass. There was something about her that reminded him of his grandmother. Not in appearance, but in the quiet dignity he saw in her posture despite her circumstances. Madame Rosette had always taught him to notice the things others overlooked, to find value where others saw none. "What if I wanted to buy her?" The words were out of his mouth before he realized he was thinking them. Mr. Thorne laughed, a sound like breaking crystal. "You? My dear boy, even this basic model costs more than you could possibly afford." "How much?" 50,000 credits, minimum. Though honestly, I'd let her go for half that just to free up the space. Tobias felt the world tilt around him. 25,000 credits was more money than his entire district saw in a year. But looking at the woman in the glass, he knew with absolute certainty that she didn't belong here. Something deep in his chest told him that she was more than what she appeared to be, that she was someone who needed help just as desperately as his grandmother did. "I'll find a way," he said, surprising himself with the firmness in his voice. Mr. Thorne's expression shifted from amusement to mild annoyance. "Young man, I appreciate enthusiasm, but I'll find a way," Tobias repeated, never taking his eyes off the woman in the glass. As he watched, he could have sworn he saw her lips curve in the faintest hint of a smile. That night, Tobias returned to his grandmother's small apartment in the lower districts with his treasures unsold and his mind churning with possibilities. Madame Rosette was sleeping fitfully on her narrow bed, each breath a struggle. He sat beside her and took her weathered hand in his. "I found someone today, grand-mère," he whispered. "Someone who needs help just like we do. I think maybe if I help her I can help us both." Madame Rosette's eyes fluttered open, focusing on his face with effort. "What did you find, mon petit?" "Hope," Tobias said simply. "I found hope." The awakening protocol 3 days had passed since Tobias first laid eyes on the woman in the glass chamber. 3 days of restless sleep, of watching his grandmother grow weaker, and of frantically searching for a solution that seemed impossible. He had returned to Thorne's Emporium twice, each time standing before her chamber with growing desperation and determination. On his third visit, something was different. As Tobias approached her corner of the store, he noticed that the woman's position had changed slightly. She was no longer sitting with her head against the wall, but instead was standing near the front of her chamber, her bare feet pressed against the glass. Her dark eyes tracked his movement as he approached, and when he placed his palm against the glass as he had before, she mirrored the gesture from inside. "You keep coming back," a voice said behind him. Tobias spun around to find a man in a maintenance uniform watching him with curious eyes. The man was perhaps 40, with graying temples and hands stained with electronic components. His name tag read, Marcus Webb, Technical Services. Yes, Tobias admitted. "There's something about her." Marcus stepped closer, his expression thoughtful. "You're not the first to notice her, but you're the first to keep coming back." He glanced around to make sure Mr. Thorne was occupied with other customers before continuing in a lower voice. "Can I tell you something, kid? In all my years maintaining the systems here, I've never seen one of them track movement like she does. Most of them," he gestured toward the other chambers. "They're programmed to respond to direct interaction, but they don't really watch. She watches everything." "What do you think that means?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment, then pulled a small device from his toolkit. "It means maybe we should find out who she really is." He connected the device to a nearly invisible port at the base of her chamber and began typing on its small screen. "This will take a few minutes, but if there's anything unusual about her neural patterns, we'll know." As they waited, Tobias found himself telling Marcus about his grandmother, about the medicine he needed, about the impossible choice between saving the person who raised him and helping someone he'd only just met. Marcus listened without judgment, occasionally nodding. "You know," Marcus said finally, "sometimes the right choice isn't the practical one. Sometimes it's the one that keeps you human." The device in Marcus's hands began to beep softly. His expression changed as he read the results, his eyes widening. "Jesus," he whispered. "Kid, we need to get her out of here now." "What? Why?" "Because according to this, she's not supposed to exist." Marcus's fingers flew over the device's interface. "Her neural patterns. They're not artificial. They're human. Completely. 100% human." He looked up at Tobias with urgent eyes. "Someone erased her memories and dumped her here, but the base consciousness is still intact. And if I'm reading this right, it's starting to reassert itself." As if responding to their conversation, the woman in the chamber suddenly pressed both hands against the glass, her eyes wide and focused directly on Marcus's device. Her lips moved silently, forming words they couldn't hear through the chamber's soundproofing. "She knows," Marcus breathed. "She knows what's happening to her. Can you get her out?" "Not alone. And not without triggering every security system in the place." Marcus pocketed his device and looked around the store with new urgency. "But I know someone who can help. There's a group of people who've been investigating places like this for months. Missing persons, human trafficking, memory manipulation, it's all connected." The woman in the chamber was becoming more agitated, pressing against the glass with increasing desperation. Suddenly, her eyes rolled back and she collapsed to the floor of her chamber, her body convulsing. "What's happening to her?" Tobias cried, pressing his face against the glass. Her real memories are fighting to surface, Marcus said grimly. The suppression protocols are trying to reassert control, but they're failing. We have maybe an hour before either her mind breaks completely or the system administrators notice the anomalies. Marcus pulled out a secure communication device and spoke rapidly into it. Cross, it's Webb. We've got a live one at Thorns. Full memory resurrection in progress. We need immediate extraction. Yes, I'm sure. No, there's a kid involved. I'll explain later, just get here. He turned back to Tobias. Dr. Evelyn Cross runs an underground medical facility. She's been helping people recover from memory manipulation procedures. If anyone can save your friend, it's her. Is she going to be okay? I don't know, Marcus admitted. But I know her name now. The device pulled fragments of her real identity. Her name is Celeste Moreau. She was a teacher at Roosevelt Elementary in District 7. Disappeared 6 months ago while investigating a suspected child trafficking ring. Tobias felt a chill run down his spine. She was trying to save children. Yeah, kid. And someone made her disappear for it. Inside the chamber, Celeste's convulsions had stopped, but she remained unconscious on the floor. Around them, the store continued its normal operation, with customers browsing the other chambers, completely unaware of the drama unfolding in the corner. 20 minutes later, 3 figures in medical uniforms entered the store, led by a woman, with short silver hair and piercing green eyes. Dr. Evelyn Cross moved with the confident stride of someone accustomed to working under pressure. She approached Mr. Thorne at his desk while her colleagues flanked Celeste's chamber. Mr. Thorne, Dr. Cross said in an authoritative voice. I'm Dr. Cross from the Neural Health Authority. We've received reports of a malfunction in one of your units. I need to examine the subject immediately. Mr. Thorne looked confused and slightly alarmed. I wasn't aware of any malfunction reports. Which unit? The female in Chamber 17. Our sensors detected irregular neural patterns that could indicate a dangerous cascade failure. If it spreads to your other units, you could lose your entire inventory. The mention of financial loss got Mr. Thorne's immediate attention. Of course, Doctor. Whatever you need. While Dr. Cross kept Mr. Thorne occupied, Marcus and the other team members worked quickly to override the chamber's locking mechanism. Within minutes, they had the glass panel open and were carefully lifting Celeste's unconscious form onto a medical gurney. Is she going to survive? Tobias asked Dr. Cross as they prepared to leave. Dr. Cross looked at him with surprise. You're the boy Marcus told me about, the one who noticed her. She glanced at Celeste's still form. Her neural patterns are stronger than most. Whatever connection you made with her, it helped anchor her consciousness during the memory breakthrough. She has a fighting chance because of you. What happens now? Now we take her somewhere safe and help her remember who she really is. Dr. Cross paused at the store entrance. What Marcus told me about your grandmother, the medicine she needs. When this is over, when we've shut down this operation and freed the others, there will be a substantial reward from the families of the people we recover. Make sure Marcus has your contact information. As they wheeled Celeste toward the exit, she stirred slightly, her eyes fluttering open. They found Tobias immediately, and this time when her lips moved, he could just make out the words, "Thank you." 2 weeks later, Tobias sat in the comfortable waiting room of Dr. Cross's facility, holding his grandmother's hand. Madame Rosette was breathing easily for the first time in months, the expensive treatment having worked better than anyone had hoped. The reward from the Moreau family and others had been more than enough to cover her care. Tobias Reed? A familiar voice called his name. He looked up to see Celeste approaching, no longer the silent figure behind glass, but a vibrant woman with kind eyes and a warm smile. She was wearing simple clothes, and Tobias noticed with satisfaction a comfortable pair of walking shoes. You look different, he said. I feel different. I remember everything now. My life before, my work, my students. But I also remember you, standing there in that terrible place, seeing me when everyone else looked right through me. She sat down beside him. Dr. Cross tells me you gave up your chance to save your grandmother to help me instead. It worked out, Tobias said, embarrassed by the praise. It worked out because you chose to see someone who needed help, even when it meant risking everything that mattered to you. Celeste took his hand. I've been talking with your grandmother and with Dr. Cross. I'm going back to teaching, but I'm also going to be working with the investigation team to find others like me. Would you like to help? Tobias looked at his grandmother, who squeezed his hand encouragingly. What would I do? What you do best, Celeste said. Notice the things other people miss. See the humanity in situations where others only see objects or problems. She smiled. Plus, I could use an assistant who understands that sometimes the most important choice isn't the practical one. It's the one that keeps us human. Outside the facility's windows, the city of Meridian sparkled in the afternoon sun. Somewhere in its depths, other places like Thorn's Emporium continued to operate. But now they had people watching, people who cared enough to look beyond the surface. Tobias squeezed Celeste's hand. When do we start? We already have, she replied. We started the moment you decided that a barefoot woman in a glass chamber was worth saving. In the weeks that followed, 12 more facilities were shut down, and 43 people were rescued and restored to their true identities. Mr. Thorne and his associates were arrested, and Marcus Webb received a commendation for his undercover work. Dr. Cross's facility expanded to help more recovery cases, but perhaps most importantly, Tobias learned that sometimes the most valuable thing you can give someone isn't money or medicine. It's recognition. The simple acknowledgement that they exist, that they matter, that they deserve to be seen and remembered. As Celeste often told the audiences at the speaking engagements they did together, freedom doesn't always come from grand gestures or dramatic rescues. Sometimes it comes from one person looking at another and saying, I see you. You are not forgotten. And in a city full of glass and chrome, where people could be bought and sold like objects, that recognition became a kind of revolution, one rescued soul at a time.